thank you for endorsing. You know, Jennifer is a writer we run to and cry and say, you know, I can't get this plot right, or there's this writer who's struggling with this. Jennifer is extremely generous. So we want to thank you for that. If I turn to Jackie Asiimwe-Mwesige, so I'll just say briefly, officially, what Jackie Asiimwe-Mwesige is. So officially, she's a Ugandan human rights lawyer, she's a leadership coach, and a philanthropy advisor. She's the current chairperson of the East African Philanthropy Network and the chief executive officer of Civil Source Africa, which is a philanthropic advisory service company that she founded in 2017. But that is the official part of Jackie. So Jackie, for us in the Ugandan literary fraternity, we know Jackie as a poet. We know Jackie as a writer. Let me share with you this incident. So in 2013, there was a conference in a small town called Hikadua. So Hikadua is on the south coast of Sri Lanka. I think about 3 or 4 hours drive from Colombo. Colombo is the capital city of Sri Lanka. So Jackie and myself were at this conference, and it was massive. We could have been about 2,000 delegates, and as always, a sprinkling of Africans. So Jackie was there as a poet, and she talked as a poet, as a human rights lawyer and a poet. So you can imagine our excitement. A few of us Ugandans would have been probably about 3 or 4, at seeing Jackie representing us at that huge conference, very far away from home. So that is the Jackie we know. You might wonder why did we invite a human rights lawyer to be in conversation with Jennifer, but she is a poet who is just a shy one. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to assure you that this afternoon we are completely in good hands, in capable hands. I just want to invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. And in the unlikely event that you don't enjoy yourself, we shall do something about that. But before I hand over to Jackie to start the conversation, I'm sure you're all very eager to listen to Jennifer. I just want to mention that as we celebrate African literature today, this afternoon, I want us to reflect on what has been happening in the African writing world. This has been an exceptionally good year for African writing, for African literature. I just want to share with you a few of the highlights that have happened in African literature. So one of them is that there is a Senegalese writer, he's called Muhammad Sarr. He won the Prix Goncourt Literary Prize. This is the biggest literature prize for France. He is the youngest writer to have ever won it. He's only 31. But what is more important, he's the first African writer from sub-Saharan Africa to win this prize. And this is a prize that was established in 1903. So it has taken more than 100 years for an African writer to win it. This was seminal for us in the African literature sector. The Booker Prize for 2021, as maybe you've already heard, was won by a South African. It's called Damon Galgut. So this was also very, very important in African writing. And also maybe to mention that on the shortlist of the Booker Prize, there was a Somali writer, Nadifa Muhammad. So that's also very important. Another Senegalese, Boubacar Boris Diop. So he has already been International Prize for Literature. This is the equivalent of the Nobel in America. And he's the only second African writer to win this prize after the and of course, the Nobel. Who hasn't had? This is the biggest ever literary prize in the world. And who goes and wins it? This is even closer to home because he's from Zanzibar. So we've been celebrating ever since this was announced. I think it's only the second Black African writer to win it after Wole Soyinka in 1998. 1986, yeah. And then coming Kwanzaa Kirabashaija was awarded the Painter International Writer of Courage. Another big prize. So this is a prize that is shared by two writers. And after Kitsi Dagaremba from Zimbabwe, is at the moment one of the biggest Ugandan climate justice activists, who has just released a memoir. And so this has just come out, I think, about two weeks back. And the good news is we have it for sale in this room. So we wish to congratulate Vanessa. The book has already created a global buzz, as you can imagine. But why am I mentioning all these highlights and literary successes for African writers? Why is this important to us, especially this audience here in Uganda? So naturally, this is going to increase the sales and probably income for the writers who have won the prizes. But for me, I look at it more importantly, that this is going to increase the readership. And the readership where? On the continent. Because these are writers who are celebrated and critically acclaimed elsewhere in the world except on the continent. I'm sure some of these names I was mentioning, you've not heard about them. Boubacar Boris Diop has been writing for the last 30 years. So when he wins this big prize, it puts spotlight on him. And we would want to read it as an African, as a fellow African. So for me, this is important that we are creating a readership on the continent. We are not hearing about, a German or American or British writer winning the Booker Prize or winning the Nobel Prize. This is an African. So naturally, I think we're going to want to read these books. It's also important that for the young writers, this is a big inspiration. When I started writing more than 25 years ago, there was nothing like this. So now we have African writers holding the candle, the literary candle, and winning big prizes. So this is an inspiration to you, our young writers. But I also want you to remember that this has not happened in a day. This has not happened overnight. This has taken decades of hard work on the side of the writers, dedication, persistence. But also not that only, it has also taken creating support structures for these writers to thrive. So that's why when we have partners like the Goethe Centrum, we really thank them because we need this kind of support. We need to work together to create support structures that enable writers to thrive and publish this kind of seminal works. And so when Jennifer Makumbi wins the Nobel, in 5 years' time, don't start asking yourself, where did this come from? It is starting right here. Thank you, I'm speaking too much. Jackie, I'm going to hand over to Jackie to start the conversation. Thank you.
Wow. So much good news. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, I wanted to begin by asking, and you need to shout really loud. How many of us are book lovers? Just generally book lovers. Akalulu. How many of us are Jennifer lovers? How many of us are Jennifer book lovers? Yeah, but that last just in brackets, our book club, and I don't know whether our chairperson is here, was the first to host Jennifer. It's called Sip and Read. We sip a lot and read sometimes. So I don't know if Ketchwood is here. She's not. How can she not be here? So anyhow, we hosted Jennifer, I think about 2019, yes, before COVID hit. And so it was a pleasure to be requested. Other names. So Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi, she has a PhD from, and I need to say this in an accent, Lancaster University. Did you hear that? You didn't. Let me say it in Ruchika. Lancaster University. She's a novelist, a short story writer. She teaches creative writing. She says until July, because now she's researching for another project. She's been a recipient of so many awards, among them the prestigious Wyndham Campbell Literature Prize in 2018. And as we've heard forecasted today, she's also going to win the Nobel very soon. So you can all say that she breathed the same air as a Nobel laureate. Please welcome her with a thunderous applause.
Thank you very much. It's fine. Is it cold? Do I speak before? You can. I speak? Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be back home, but people back home embarrass you all the time. And I hope nobody put the Nobel thing on social media. Please don't. It's wonderful to be back home, and it's so wonderful to see so many of you on a working day in the afternoon, leaving everything that you're supposed to be doing. And I was only aware of the readers that were within my world. I wasn't aware. I think this get away with it. You can't say that. Oh, now you can say, you know. But I kept on thinking, what are the Ugandans saying? Because to me, this is a book that was meant for readers from 50, a reader who is 90, an old man or an old woman. And I just wanted us to come and talk about being a woman in Uganda. Occupying this body in Uganda. And also, so that my son, my father, my uncle, my grandfather, my husband, all those wonderful people could understand what it is to be a woman within Uganda and all the things we carry on our bodies. So let's have a fantastic discussion.
Great. Thank you for setting this up for us. But before we go to the first woman,
Yeah.
I wanted us to talk about Jennifer, the person, not the writer, not the author, not the just Jennifer. Where did you grow up? Where is village? Where is home?
Okay, I grew up exactly like most of you. Okay, village is where just after Woodlands. If you go to Kati Kati, that's where everybody comes from. So that's where we buried. So that's home. But my parents were in Kawempe, and I went to Mengo Primary School. Anybody from Mengo?
Yes.
You are.
The next Nobel. Anyway. Wait for P6 and P7.
No,
Yes.
we keep that for later.
Yes.
And then from Mengo, I went to Trinity College in Mengo. Okay, now bingo Tricona. Okay. And then from there, I went to King's College in Budapest. Oh, the school. And from there, I went to the Islamic University in Bali. Anybody here from the Islamic? Come on, where is Bali? Okay. So I just wanted to say that I've lived the kind of lives you've lived. I mean, I know most of you have been to boarding schools, and I used to take my mokebe, that suitcase that is thin with the grab.
Get sharp edges and cuts you.
I know, and it's the same kind of life that you've lived, and there was nothing special about me. Well, I did a little bit well in school, but just like everybody else. But all that was perhaps crazy about me is that I read like mad. Really, sometimes I missed classes to read a book. Sometimes, especially in Nabingo, was really terrible because that's where we shared books. And sometimes you'd ask a girl, "Can I borrow a book?" And she says no. She leaves this under the pillow. I hide behind the door. The nun comes and locks the door and locks me in. I get the book out of the pillow, read it, and then catch up with the classes later. That was how bad I was in school in terms of reading. But otherwise, I lived a normal Ugandan life.
Okay, very interesting. What are you reading now? What book are you reading?
Okay, you won't believe it. At the moment, I'm reading Julius Ochino's The Footprints. I came back and one of my nieces was reading it. And I picked it up. I said, "Can I have a look?" Because if I was sitting again, I would be teaching it. So I had a look at it, and I'm seeing some of the things I do in my books and saying, "Oh, I thought I was original." This is a Ugandan thing. We don't follow the plot very well. We go there and we go over there, and then we go forward, and then we go there and we go. And I was like, "Oh my God, this explains me."
Okay. If you were to dine with an author, living or dead, who would it be?
Dine? Dine with an author? Oh, I wonder what Okot Popitai could be like. I think me and him would have a very candid conversation because he was not shy, was he?
No.
Yeah, I think it would be Okot Popitai.
Okay.
And I would have a few things to say to him.
Okay. Become a thing or they get a thing. Are you like that? Like, does your hair grow all over the place? Do you wear your pajamas for 40 days and 40 nights? Or do you binge on ice cream? Like, what's your thing when you're in the zone when you're writing?
I don't know where people come up with those stories about, pajamas. No, we are normal people. We take a shower and take off the pajamas.
Once every book.
Yeah. I've had a lot of myths. But perhaps the one thing that is not very good about me, and you don't realize, it's only your partner or people around you who tell you, but you know what, this is really not nice about you. So one of the things is that sometimes I could carry out a conversation with my partner without being part of it. So often I go into the world I'm creating and I'm with the characters, but we are in the car driving somewhere and he's talking and talking and talking. And I'm saying, of course, absolutely. And then he stops talking and he says, did you hear what I said? I said, yeah, of course. So can you tell me what I've been saying? But it's because you learn to hear that cadence in the voice and you realize he's expecting, and you say, you know. So that's one of the things that is bad about me. Or sometimes I wake up at 5 and I start working. He leaves at around 8, comes back at 9, and I'm at the computer. And he said, did you have lunch? Did you? And I stand up and the legs are swollen. And he says, you're going to switch it off and stop. But if the ideas are there, I don't want to stop until I've put them down because I forget things. So those are some of the perhaps crazy things that I do, but no. And by the way, there are people who say that a writer wakes up in the pajamas again, gets a glass of wine and types. No, it's painful actually.
Yeah. It's painful actually. And so we shall walk through the pain of the first woman. Where did that story come from? What is the why that made you write this book?
I think the why, and I've written this book for such a long time that when you take me back to where I start wondering, where did I start? When did this happen? And it's very difficult for me to pinpoint. But I think the essence of it was once I created Chilabo, and she's a girl, and she's growing up in rural Africa, uh, rural Uganda, rural Nateta in Bukelele. Then specific things started to happen to her because then I started considering the idea of an African childhood, which is not pain related or the kind of African children that you see on the media in the West. So that was important for me to show a traditional, not westernized middle class in the city, but traditional African childhood, that the space is open, that everybody is mom, dad, auntie, whatever, and everybody loves you to such an extent you hate it, that there's food, that there's a lot around you. It's not perfect. I wasn't interested in anything perfect. But I just wanted to say we have a way, we love each other, and we have a way we bring up our young. And it was not introduced from the West, this is us. So that was important. But of course, Nsota happened to the book, and she took it into different directions, and she gave me all sorts of ideas. And as Chilabo started to grow and her body started to change, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go through everything and put everything, the unsayable and the sayable, here, and let's have a discussion. And once I decided that, I went all the way.
That's nice. I can relate to Chirabo, and I think many of us can when you're a grandchild growing up with your grandparents,
Yes.
and one of them, you sleep with them,
Yeah,
and
I know.
it was just a beautiful, for me, creation of Ubuntu.
Oh, absolutely. And with Chilabo jumping into grandfather's bed, that was very intentional because I was writing in the West. And in the West, they don't understand why we share beds. No, it just doesn't make sense. So why would a girl child,
Yes.
jump into her grandfather's bed? And my editor immediately came back to me and said, oh my God, I thought this was child molesting. I was so offended. I mean, a lot of us roll into our older brothers, older sisters' bed, into our parents' bed, but especially grandmother
Yes,
and grandfather's bed. there's something about them, and she has wetted her bed, and grandfather said, "It has rained, oh, jump in my bed." But for the West, that is, ooh. I just didn't want to have this misunderstanding, of what blackness is and what we are like. So I thought I could make it as innocent as possible.
Yeah, yeah. You talk about a woman being a body of water.
Mhm.
Tell us what that's about.
Okay, so now that's the big thing. Okay, so when I started doing my PhD at Manchester University, I wanted to look at the origins of women's oppression. And I started to tell my supervisors that, you know what, if talk about my oral traditions, you can find a thread there that takes you to the sense that women were perceived as coming from water. And I said that for me, this could be a paradigm we could use to understanding women's oppression in Uganda. I'm not going to talk about Africa. I'm not going to talk about the rest of the world, but I'm going to talk about in Uganda, especially Buganda, because that was what I knew. And then I started to excavate all those folk tales that we grew up on, and I started to read them because they are texts, but I started to read them as with a feminist slant. So most of you who've read the book know those stories, but you have never looked at them from a feminist angle, So I started to look at them and I saw, this kind of thing being rampant. And of course, when I connected it to the West, I could see the silk in Ireland. I could see the mermaid around the world. So I thought, I'm onto something. I can offer this as a PhD. And I was laughed out of the university. They're like, who wrote about this? Who has ever talked about it? Who are you going to quote? And I was like, I can quote my grandfather, But, I was told it hadn't been written about, it was mediated, and I was told I couldn't do that PhD. But there was a woman and a lecturer there, she was called Margaret Bithworth. I will never forget that woman because I was in tears and it was such a painful experience. She told me, Jennifer, you are an author. Why do you worry about the Western institutions to take your ideas through? Just author them. And for a moment, I was like, oh, because I'm African, they think I can't do theory and whatever. But then I realized that if I wrote about this aspect in a novel, then it's going to travel back to Uganda. And even a 15-year-old girl would pick up my book and say, oh no, Jennifer, because it belongs to you. It belongs to them. Therefore, she can say, she didn't go far this much, or I don't agree with her, or I can develop it this much, so that it can be developed because I'm limited as a person. I can only be what I am and what I've experienced and what I've read. But I thought that if then it comes out of a novel, and I've written a story rather than theory, then I can take it back to the people where it comes from, and they can do whatever they want with it. So this is where it comes. This is where it comes from in terms of ending up in the novel. So the novel itself was around, but now I had to include that idea. And in Suta and Chirabo were the tools that would do it for me.
When I think of woman as a body of water, water is at once containable and yet not.
Yes.
And I think that's what women are. Yes, we can fool you into thinking you have put us in a bottle, but let this water spill. You will not know the shape of us or where we flow. A woman is at once fierce and calm. Water heals and destroys. Water is life, can also be death. And I think for me that descriptor, as a feminist, as an activist, I thought to myself, I wish we knew, because I think we go around assuming, let me empower. Yet really we are power, we have power. It's just connecting, like you said, to the stories that we've been told, see them in a feminist way, and be able to tell people, no, you already have it, it's already in you. So that for me is how I connected, woman being a body of water. It also made me think of, water is made up of droplets. The movement I belong to, a women's rights movement, a feminist movement, is made up of individual women, but together we are a body of water. And I think I also sense that theme in the first woman, that together women are formidable. We do things for each other. We make ways to protect each other, defend each other, while scolding each other in the back. Like, we are a body of water.
Yes, and of course it's meant to be interpretive. But I often wanted people to go back to the beginning, to our oral traditions, because we have the Western feminism, It arrived in the 1975. At least that's when we became aware, because some women went to Mexico City. And at that time, feminism started to appear on TV, and the word Moikano started floating around, and of course there was a lot of resistance, But and that feminism, I'm not saying it was wrong feminism. It has made a lot of difference in Uganda. The feminism that came from the West. Because I know that, and I'm going to say something that I'll never say again. I know that Museveni, the president, took up on, when he first arrived in '86, took up the idea of Western feminism and decided, okay, we need to have, that bumper on the girl child when going to university, 1.5 points, so that girls, they blow up, the numbers going to university grow, but also we have a vice president who was a woman for the first time, and every step of the way of administration, they created a woman's position, so that women can evolve. Now, Museveni picked that from the first feminism that came from the West, which is wonderful. But when you come to, when I talk about Ugandan women, I'm talking about the vice president, but also the woman servant who's working in her house, or the woman who is in the garden, or the woman in Nansubuga. The feminism that is going to unite us. Because the feminism from the West came in English. It was also written, okay? And it had icons, who were all white women we didn't relate to. And it was a movement. So we all took it up and thought we could do the same. But then if you step back, you realize that we are not oppressed the same around the world. We are oppressed differently. So in a particular way, there are things that happen in Uganda to women that they don't happen to women in the West. So Western feminism may not really help fully. So this is why I thought, let's go back to our traditional ideas. What did my grandmother leave behind in oral traditions? Because remember, those oral traditions are coded. You have to decode them.
Yes.
And I think for me, so have you heard of Chiwobe Neligai? The story. This is one man who lived with sheep, with single sheep. And he really loved it, took it everywhere he went and whatever. And then one day he decided to marry a wife. And the sheep was very unhappy. But as he left, he told the woman, the wife, at around this time, take my sheep to graze. When the husband left, the sheep turned to the wife and said, "You stupid fool, what did your husband say? Can you take me to graze?" And the wife told the husband, "Your sheep talks." He said, "No." He really talks. No. He said, "Okay." One time the husband hid and heard the sheep saying things. And you know what the husband did? He told the wife, "Kill it and let's eat it." So the sheep killed the wife, wore the busuti, and cooked the wife. And while they were eating, the sheep said, "Look at this stupid fool eating his wife." But I'm not going to finish the story. But decode. Now let's decode it. Now, you remember in the past, husbands married two wives. So who is the first wife? Exactly. Now, this is the story that the second mother, who is younger, who has younger children, is telling her children in her heart about the first family over there, you know? Absolutely. You have no idea. Now we come along, we tell the story. Of course, the man is absolute an idiot. These are women between themselves. You know, so the husband tells the young wife to handle the older wife. He thinks she can do it. You know, so the first wife, in order to handle her situation, has created these characters and passing on the story to her children. And me, I came along and I'm thinking, really, a man had a sheep which was his friend until he married a wife. So the first wife is written out, she becomes a sheep. You know, that's how you handle issues. So when you hear these stories as a writer, as a reader, look beyond the surface. There's so much going on in those stories. It's incredible.
Wow. So we've gone below the surface. Now I want us to fly with Chirabo.
Okay.
When I first read about her out of body experience, I thought, oh man, we're going to, she's probably has mental health issues and that's where this book is going to go. But what was that about? At the same time, maybe it was about imagination. I don't know, but yeah, this out of body, is it a thing? Do you fly out of body?
I wish. It is something I had read about. You know, that there are people who have out of body experiences, the people who step out and watch the body outside of themselves. That is a thing. And there are people who fly out of their body. That is a thing. That is not me. But for me, it was a way of expressing a kind of anger that is mixed with frustration, that is mixed with hopelessness, that is also a child, that somebody has just told you that your body is foul, but you're trapped in it. And you're a child in Buganda who can't talk back to grown-ups, you know? So the best thing is to step out of that body and rage. And, but there is no other way. If I say, and she got angry, or she was mad, would that make you wouldn't even be talking about it now. But because I used the image of Chirabo stepping out of her body and is just flying around the room, but even then she's not flying out of the house, she's trapped in the room, you know, and is looking back at her body and wondering what is wrong with that. That prepares you for the issues that I'm going to handle and their gravity. So for me, it was more of a tool to express the kind of anger that I don't have a word for.
Very interesting. Her grandmother also used to have, or noticed, or recognized what that was in Chirabo, and wanted to encourage her, in a sense, to keep on freeing herself. And then Chirabo maybe feels at some later point that, no, I better still this body. So, in a sense, was it a grandmother telling a grandchild, it's okay to free your spirit?
Okay, that is Nsota.
Yes.
Because grandmother would be like, no, stay.
Not the grandmother at home.
Yeah, but she is actually Chirabo's grandmother. Yes, Nsota, we all have Nsota in our lives, don't we? That crazy grandmother who says the things that she shouldn't be saying to you. But yes, Nsota had been a Chirabo herself. But of course, she went blind and she was brought back to earth although she then found a way of handling that. But she saw herself in Chirabo and thought, I can mentor this child. And especially as Chirabo had been kept away from her,
Yes.
because Tom is her son, but Alexa is keeping Chirabo to herself. So Chirabo arrives in the home, and she is more like Consorta than her real grandmother. And Consorta is like, oh my God, this is it. So for her, she sees a free spirit that is pulled down to earth and is saying, look, right, let me prepare you for flight. Let me give you the right ideas that will help you fly. So for her, she's all about encouraging it to fly. So when she said, oh, but I fly, can you stop me? She said, yeah, of course, I know all about it. Just keep visiting me.
Yeah. There are multiple love stories.
Oh, yes.
Are you a hopeless romantic? You smiled in a way that
No,
Yes.
because I have talked about this book in the West, and nobody has talked about the love, and I worked so hard at it. I hoped that when I return home, people would talk about love, because I was so desperate to express love that is not meals and booze. Yes. And so I worked at CEO, I worked at Chirabo, I worked at Nsuta, I worked at Miro. Those two people who had this really love.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say to people that there are many ways of being. There are many ways of being in love. If you're not the kind of person who turns around and says, oh, I love you. 2 seconds later, I love you. 3 seconds later, kisses, whatever. If you're not like that, it is also possible to be who you are in the way you fall in love. So I just wanted to put out, besides all the issues that I was going to deal with, I just wanted us to see people falling in love in the 30s and feeling it that they are in love, and people falling in love in the 70s, especially little children, because of course we know we are not supposed to be doing that.
Yes.
So I thought this is to have a discussion of that.
Interesting. And the other love, which is almost love hate, is Chirabo is forever seeking the love of a mother, and is rebutted when they finally meet. Yes, there's love, but there's also, for me, the element of seeking. Do you think, and maybe seeking never ends in a sense? Even for, I can even almost see a Chirabo part 2, but like,
Dream on.
what is this theme? Dream on. What was that? Was it just about the mother, or an embodiment of the things we seek?
And it goes back to the idea of motherhood in Uganda, that for a very long time, mothering was getting pregnant, going to the labor ward and having children, and then you're a mother. And yet we know that is not true in our experiences, And yet every time a woman has not had children in Uganda, they mention it. She didn't have children, okay? And we limited motherhood to just pregnancy.
The biology of it.
Yeah, and because we see a lot of mothers who are not mothers, and it's very typical in Uganda. A lot of mothers are not mothers, but then a lot of women are mothers. They just mother. Give them children and they will mother. So I had one of my grandmothers that I mentioned in the book, at the beginning of the book. She had the largest number of children. And yet when she died, at the graveside, they said she never had children. And I was so mad. First of all, I didn't know that she never had children, but I turned to my aunt and I said, but Jackie Asiimwe-Mwesige had so many children, and she was just that. Because she was also angry that she could not fight it. You know, this is the grandmother who had grandmothered the whole clan. But they dared, when she could not fight back, she was dead, and they said she never had children. You know, and so I thought we need to discuss the idea of mothering. Chirabo had mothers. The whole village had mothered her, but most of all, that grandmother had mothered her. And then she left the village, went to the city. Aunt Abby had mothered her, and Aunt Abby had not had a child. And by the time the book ends, Aunt Abby is at a stage where I don't think she's going to have children. But Chirabo is looking for someone else, you know. There was a lot of love around her, and she needed to go and meet a wall and then come back and see all that she had had. And I thought this is important for us to look back in our lives and see the mothers that we've had. Because whenever Mother's Day comes, we think of the woman who went to the neighborhood. You know, but there are so many women, and they do it not that you're going to be appreciative of, but they do it because that's the way to be, because they love it. And it's important that we mention those women, that they're not relegated to the woman that, I don't want to use the barren word, the woman who never had a child. That is terrible.
It is. And then there were stepmothers. And when you wrote the book, I told you over lunch that I felt slightly, we go down the road of the stepmother is, you know, the ugly one, nasty one, couldn't we, the book was going so well, why did we go towards that narrative? But yeah, you know, tell us about stepmothering.
So when I started writing about the way women are perceived, I thought of the witch, the bitch, the slut, and the stepmother. Those are some of the major categories a bad woman falls in. And indeed, you can see I had all of those. The slut was removed. It will be put back probably in later editions. But I so wanted you to be uncomfortable. I wanted you to be uncomfortable around Nambi, you know, because most of us know of a stepmother, okay? And most of us know them as these horrible creatures. But we've never realized that our fathers made them stepmothers. And actually, it's only recent that men have started to accept children born to women and bringing them into their homes. But in the past, we used to deny that we had children. Indeed, a lot of children have grown up without knowing their mothers because they had to hide. You had to hide when you were a child, so you hide this. So a lot of children have grown up with their mothers and their older sisters. You know. So to work on the stepmother paradigm. It's until Chirabo realizes she's going to become a stepmother, and she notices, oh my God, I'm turning into Nambi. And then she realizes what happened to her stepmother, you know? And the whole thing is all mixed up because Tom made Naku pregnant, okay? Naku abandons the child and he's handing it over to the sister. You know, he didn't bring up the child. Grandmother brought up the child. Now it suits me. Let me bring her to the city. And Tom looks perfect. He's a perfect Muganda man, isn't he? You know? Oh yeah, he loves his mother, he loves his father, he has his child, he was a little bit young, so I hand him over to mom and dad, oh, but I've made money now. There's a wife who can bring her up. So I dump her there without asking her. In the morning, he's going to wake up and go to work and leave the child with the stepmother, who knows very well that if she had had a child like that, she would have not brought her in that house. But I write it in such a way that I want to take the Ugandan mind along, believing that Nambi is terrible, is the horrible one, and we get very angry with Nambi until Tom is taken away. And then you start to see Nambi. Or until Seal does it to Chirabo. And then you start to understand Nambi. And therefore, yes, culture says that if you've had a child, that child belongs with a father. And yes, that child should be brought up in the home together with a wife, especially if you've had the child before. But for goodness sake, the home belongs to husband and wife. Let's talk about it. If one says, I don't want the child, don't. Think about the child. She's being straightforward with you. Because most stepmothers say, oh, of course, bring her. And then she will feed hers and not the other one. But if the woman has been straightforward and said, you know what, I don't want to do that, then think again. Maybe men will start not having so many children, you know. Yeah. So I knew this would be very controversial. There would be people who would be on Chirabo's side, and there would be people who would be on Nambi's side. But I thought this paradigm of Cinderella, most of our oral traditional stories are about a little girl born and given to the.
Wow. So you reference Omwenkano, equality, for those who do not understand Uganda, or an attempt to define equality. And I also sense a sort of play between Beijing people and those who went on behalf of, the Beijing is that a word? Who went on behalf of those that they had left behind, and the conversation of, but who sent you there and where is that and what did you say you didn't tell me you were going to speak on my behalf?
Yeah.
How do we break down in a sense that siloed feminism, if I were to call it that? Or what makes you reference it anyway?
First of all, I'm really not good with answers. I'm very good at posing questions, but and often I don't know the answer. But one of the things that idea of feminism, as I started with the feminism coming from the West and coming to Uganda, and then kind of breaking us up, middle class women who read and write and understand feminism from the West, and the working class woman who has not read up on that feminism and which doesn't make sense to them. It's just that, one, of course, we need to have this discussion between us women. You know, what kind of woman are you to the woman who cleans your house, to the woman who is bringing up your children? There's that funny thing. We leave your most prized because they are doing the mothering. And I didn't realize this until I got my own maid when I had my son. And one day I came home and my son said, and I'm going to say to him that, Mami ekichwe numa. And I said, ekichwe? And the neighbor told me that the maid used to say to my son, so my son didn't know that the hay is omutwe. He thought omutwe is a chitwe. So, and that pulled me back. And I said, you know what? You need to treat the person you leave your child with like a princess. because otherwise it's your child, you know. But most of us middle class women have left the maternal space, sorry, the maternal space to the maids, okay, including bringing up our children, okay. But we have not realized that by the fact that we pay them, we come across as men to them, you know. So for them, they remove us from the feminine to the masculine. Because what do? You come back with your high heels, you know, your bags. Hello, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do? Sometimes we act masculine, don't we, when we come to somebody who is not at our level, you know? So until I realized that, you know what, this can't be between me and the girl who thinks I'm a man, you know, because wow, for her, if you are no longer in the maternal space, you're bringing up children, I clean for you, I cook for you, well, you might as well be a man. And so we have to find a bridge between us and that woman, you know. And some of the things, sometimes, I remember one time I went to Nakuradi, there was a market, you know, and I was buying gonja, you know, and I was in a truck suit, I had just come from running. And these women, they looked at me and they decided I came from the north. And one, again, I'm going to speak in Uganda. One said, "Okalabano, kabadde keya kida." You know, like it's very hard to translate into Uganda. Like, you know how you put fish on omukalo? Yeah? That for me, keeping fit is becoming omukalo. And then she said, oh, abasoma. Konna katono kaweddeyo, neera kati. You know, and I realized how the distance between me and them. And yet, we, especially middle class women, we say, oh, this is us Ugandan women. This is Ugandan feminism. But we are leaving someone behind who doesn't understand what we are doing there and whose reality we don't understand that. And for me, the movement is wonderful, but feminism happens at the individual level. It happens in privacy. It's also every day. It's, as I was saying, a woman wakes up in the morning, gets dressed, and the minute she steps outside the house, it's fighting. And we learn to fight, to push, and then you come to a point where you say, I want to win here. So again, when you say movement, so you know, putting up a podium and talking about, they will look at me and say, look at that one. But it's them that we should start with and start taking it higher. Okay, from the ground level, and we take it to the national level, we take it to African level, and then we join the global. That way, we will bridge the gap. But at the moment, I think we are not going very far. At least my experience in Uganda.
Yeah, interesting. So I will not hold Jennifer. I want to clap and so it's our turn in the audience. What are your questions, your thoughts, what would you like to ask Jennifer about the first woman? And I don't know who is helping us, yes, with the mic. I see 1, 2, 3. Can we take 3 at a go? And we'll do maybe 3 rounds and then bring it back to them. You have a little microphone.
Okay, we'll share this one. There was a
Thank you so much, Dr. Makumbi. My name is Waswat Sule, and I'm a huge fan of your work. And I'd like to ask the following 5 questions.
And I want to remember that. Yes. I just pick one, which is most pressing.
Okay, thank you. Why did you choose in the first woman to show your empowered female characters as Jiramo and the others, as opposed to the empowered Baganda women from our history, like Nanono, who was the first woman to rule Buganda, or the Namasole, or the Luga, or the women that Baganda worship, like Jajan Nakaima, or the woman who some Baganda wanted to crown Kawaka, Princess Karen and Nalmansi. And conversely, why is it that in Chintu you choose to portray men and focus on their domestic careers as husbands and fathers, as opposed to their military careers, given that Baganda men were most glorious as masters of organized violence, war, raids, and is that a job you're taking at men that as they usually as they normally portray women as they normally focus on women as mothers and wives as opposed to their career achievements. We choose to focus on Chintu's domestic achievements rather than his military prowess as Pokino and General in the Kawakasan. Thank you very much.
If that's only one, I wonder what the. But thank you so much. Will you remember it or do you want to answer it now?
And we are going to answer that, and I'm not going to answer it all. First of all, the first question was why I didn't focus on the major figures of the women.
Icons.
Something's wrong. Is it this? And one, I didn't know about Mandela. Most of those women you mentioned, I didn't know them. Okay, but I was thinking of Nami, because I had written about you. So for me, all of those women are recent. For me, it was Nami, but it was the problem with the name Nami. So Nsuta was at one time Nami, but then after realizing that she did have children, Ate Nandi is Jajawe Iwa Uganda. I knew I would get in trouble with Baganda, so I changed it. And then I thought I would make Chilabu Nambi. But then she was not exactly fitting into the Nambi narrative properly. The way Chintu fitted in. So it's basically because Nambi is well known in Uganda that I had trouble, processing her. And then I wanted to make her the grandmother, Chilabu's grandmother, but she was too passive and too conforming. So all of those women were one time a Nambi, And then I realized that I am not capable of creating Nambi, the first mother of Buganda, the way I created Chintu, the first man, interpretively in that book, And I decided, you know what? But there's the ugly side of Nambi, the fact that Nambi brought death into Buganda, and this is one thing that we pretend does not exist. And this is the one thing that whenever women are created by masculinities, they're going to create all sorts of sides to us. So Nambi to be Death's sister. Oh yeah, you know that. So once Nambi was accused of killing her husband, I thought, because her name was different, I thought this is it. Let's go back to that accusation that Nambi brought death into Buganda or into the world, So that was specifically, that was the job. you know, making somebody who is so not like Nambi and Nambi. But it all started with the fact that I could not create a character that could carry the weight of being the grandmother. So that is the Nambi side. What was the other question?
Chintu, you focused on his domestics and not his prowess.
Chintu focused on his domestic and not on his prowess.
Military prowesses.
When I understand that I was
Choice,
accused
yeah.
of putting a gun in the hands of Kusi, which is a major phallic symbol, instead of the men. Do you know that I was very, very sympathetic to masculinities in Chintu? I couldn't even believe myself. I mean, I knew, because remember, this is my first book. The First Woman is my first book. So by the time I wrote Chintu, this book was done, and I knew it was coming. So I thought, okay, Chintu goes there first. I'm writing good men, saying good things about men, you know. It was for me, and it goes back to feminism. The idea that if we want feminism to work, we must show men how the patriarchy opposes them too. You know?
Yes.
Because once you realize, men, that you're oppressed, you will join us. Now, I'll give you an example.
Give it up.
So I have a son, and he is at that age where he starts to date. And I'm looking at him and thinking, boy, I have struggled to bring up this boy. If any girl comes around and thinks we are going to pay dowry for her, just because we are the male, I don't think so. It's not happening. I have been in Uganda here, I grew up here, and I saw what happened to my brothers. I had a little cousin who would come to me and say, Jennifer, I'm taking my girlfriend. His girlfriend was called DB. I'm taking DB out, but I have money for transport, but I don't have money for her samosas. And they were very young. And so I would give him the money and say, but what about you? He said, no, as long as I buy her a soda and a samosa, we are fine. And then he would come back late and say, well, I used my transport money to buy ABCD. For who? For DP. And I thought that is so wrong. You know, we Ugandan girls have turned the whole idea of dating into a business. No, honestly, because I don't know about you, but in my time, we called it Okokorerinyo. Honestly, if girls are brought up to be independent, why would a girl come out with a boy and expect a boy who is the same age as her, who is not working to buy her drinks, or when you go out with a guy, why do you expect him to pay the bill? You know, I know whenever I start talking about those things, girls go quiet.
No romance without
No,
finance.
honestly, I'm telling you, man, until you join us, you're going to pay.
Yes.
You're going to pay for women being humble and nice to you. You know, it is very, very important that we bring up girls to be individualistic, to be self-sustaining. You know, and the best way to get rid of that is to get rid of the dowry, because the boys too are brought up, okay? And it's expensive to bring them up. But we start with the young ones. If a girl goes out with a boy, you can pay the bill too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So who was, you were the next? Yes. Okay. The lady in green.
A comment. My name is Sheila Namuma.
Okay.
And let me say why I'm excited about this speech, because the things I liked first woman is Okweluma,
Yes.
which I can talk about, yeah? I had gone to Nansubuga before. It was an all-girls school, Catholic boarding, very fantastic school. There was not really bullying there when I was there, but I had stories from Gayaza, from I don't know about Tripona, but girls were bullied by fellow girls in a lot of on-the-ground schools.
Yeah.
So Okweluma was very interesting. So I tried to have this discussion on our girls group. Man, it took a different time. But this was Nansubuga, where it didn't really happen. But I found people were very defensive. I think the kind of bullying I would think about in Nansubuga my year, which was 98 to 2001, was more like cliques and who's who, that kind of thing. So it's not really direct, but it's a kind of exclusive behavior. So I really liked Okweluma, that's my comment. And then the other thing I really like about First Woman is painful periods.
Oh, yes.
I think this is a really worthy discussion.
Absolutely.
So I was diagnosed with endometriosis just last year, past COVID, that's what I call it. And I have been very enthusiastic about talking about painful periods. I was in the girls' school again, where you go to the sick bay. These guys don't know what they're doing. They just think everyone goes through this. I went to the same in Budo. 20 years later, I was diagnosed last year.
Yeah.
So it's a worthy conversation. Like, I like just the dynamic of in the girls' school, how the nuns understood and kind of helped. And I also liked how you had the discussion between the sexes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't actually have this conversation with the guys we live with. They actually have painful periods and they can't function.
Yeah.
So that's really a worthy discussion. So I have no question, just comment. Thank you.
I think our battery is out. Yeah. Say something, Becky?
Thank you for that comment. Those were major issues, and I intentionally, because the periods are an unnecessary thing, and yet we suffer from this. And our brothers don't want to hear about it. Our dads sometimes are sympathetic, but our sons, oh my God, Mom, and then of course,
and they
it
are you.
becomes, but also because they've been made in some cultures, women are separated from the society when they are on their periods. In some societies, you don't do this, you don't do that. And yet we know the major aspect of periods is that this is where humanity is procreated. And so I thought, let's have a discussion about it, but also let's girls be able to tell the boyfriend, you know what, I'm in pain right now. For those who have pain, because not everybody gets the pain. But I thought, because my book was going to be read by men, I thought I should include it along the way so that they are aware. But Okweluma is a more urgent issue for me, because this is not about women turning on women. That's not my problem. My problem is oppressed people. Because they are oppressed and they can't fight the oppressor, they turn on each other. So you hear these sayings, oh, women oppress women. Women make the worst bosses. Have you heard all those?
Yeah.
And sometimes we women say those things. But the reality is we don't know where it comes from. It's the same reason why if your man cheats on you, you don't fight him. You beat up the other guy. Because you can't beat up the man. But that is not because you're a bad person, but because the pain should come out and it goes to the wrong person, because that is the only one you can take up. And in Uganda, we have all sorts of funny aspects, because I was listening to radio the other day, and the woman was saying, oh, stop, husband is cheating on you, then there's something wrong with you. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we can't fight this. Because it was a fair woman saying this, But Okweluma is about being oppressed and not being able to fight the oppressor. So how do you relieve yourself? Sometimes we turn on ourselves, but often when you stretch your hand, Jackie is close by, so you hit on that to release. But it's a very, very important aspect in terms of oppressed people. It's not just women, but in Britain, you hear black people kill more black people, because there are more black people close to them. And then people wonder, oh my God, oh, they kill each other more. But actually, it's because they are oppressed. So that it was a major issue for me. It's nothing to do with women being bad.
So there was one other question this
That-
side.
the-
Okay, you want to keep. Okay.
Okay, go on.
Can you raise your voice loud enough? We're trying to bring back the other mic. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Oh, it's Joel.
I'm Joel. I have two things to say. One is just a thank you. I remember when I got this book, 1st of October. I got it from African Writers Trust. I think in very many ways, there are very many stories we have within us that we want to tell. I have read a lot of books. I read excessively. I have never been broken open as fast as you did it in just probably 4 pages. All of a sudden, I could write stories about the things that I know. I remember when I finished reading maybe about 5 chapters, I called my mother and I asked her, most of the times when we are sitting down to eat, when we are young, they tell you to sit, but don't put your arm down, but sit.
Yeah.
And don't also sit like a Muslim.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell my mother, they tell you to sit like that, but what do they call that? Right? And it took about 15 minutes for my mother to arrive at the word, and she was also unsure to say that that way of sitting in Luganda is called okukangabiriza. For me to arrive at just thinking through how that could be is because all of a sudden after reading your book, the way we sit could appear in some form of a word and it could fit on a page and come to life. So I just want to thank you for breaking me open personally, and I really hope that everybody else just feels like that. Like, there are little things that we see, and you read so many books and you just can't find the word for it.
Yeah.
There were so many times in the book that I just felt like, oh, that thing, and I could write it. So thank you. Just thank you so much. I hope to write at least, because now I have the language. The question is about language. I've listened to you speak about the first woman a lot. Sorry, I'm talking. But
Go on.
you said, I think in an interview, you said that you wrote the first woman and you think or you feel it's the book you wanted to write. And that in part also it being the book you wanted to write is why the delay in publishing. How did you arrive at language like this? Even on social media like, Nansubuga Makumbi, like you're reading the words in English going, this is Luganda.
I know, right?
I can see this. Just how did you arrive at that? I mean, it's magical. And thank you for it.
By the way, somebody thought I didn't know English.
One, you've made my day.
Yeah.
When I wrote the first woman and it was rejected, I decided so when the first woman was rejected back in 2003, I had those dreams of being rich and big and whatever. So I abandoned them. And then I started to write into it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write naturally. And I'm going to write to Uganda. And a lot of people, especially white people who come to travel here, they've kept on saying to me, how can you write to Ugandans? Whenever we talk to Ugandans, they say they don't read. How can you write to them? And I keep saying, but I'm Ugandan. and I read. There must be Ugandans there. But it was, once my book was rejected, I decided, you know what? I'm going to talk to my people. I'm going to have a conversation. And I knew that I wasn't going to sell a lot of books in Uganda. And I still sell more books outside than I do in Uganda. But there's something about this audience. There's something about the eyes. There's something about the body language, about the way we speak, that makes me just go on and just speak the way I do. And at first I thought, will they relate to this? And then Ugandans started to write to me, and saying, oh, we understand, we do, this makes perfect sense. And I say, you know what? I'm writing a Ugandan novel. I'm not writing an international novel. I'm going to, because you all know here that we grew up on Western books, and no one tried to explain things to us. How could we have studied Shakespeare? I mean, think about it.
Yes.
I remember arriving in Britain and going to my MA class, and I had done more Shakespeare than that class. I don't know what's going on in Uganda. And then I did Jane Austen, Dickens. I knew all of those people, but nobody explained them to me. And when you read Western books, they tend to use seasons as imagery. Now, I had seen snow in the freezer. Exactly. But somehow somebody is talking about now the winter of our discontent. And you know what? Ugandan teachers are so mean, they would ask you to explain that. And I say, you know what? If I want to write a book that a Ugandan child, that a Ugandan man or woman can hold and stand with a professor of literature from Harvard University and say, with all due respect, you don't know what you're talking about. And this happened to me when I went to Nigeria. So I've always thought I knew things fall apart in and out. I knew things fall apart in and out. But then a guy stood up and said, now, Okongo. And I said, what? Okongo. We've been calling him Okongo. I was brought down to earth, and if I can't even pronounce the name of the main character, what do I know? Yes, let me go back to Chintu.
Okay, the next set of questions, I see the hand of the gentleman in pink, in a pink top. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments? I see Gloria and then the lady in pink.
Good afternoon. My name is Morgan. Recently, I came across one of your interviews, and you were trying to talk about feminism, and then you went further to divide it as indigenous, which meant an African feminism, and then you talked about the Western feminism. Now, when and if you talk to Jordan, that is his son, which feminism do you teach?
Oh, God. This is why I hate home audience. No one in Europe would ask me that. First of all, boys are not very easy to bring up, And when I know mine, I try, maybe I pushed a little too much, feminism on him. But I realized that talking feminism to him was not going to work. Because he spends so much time with me. He sees my weaknesses, he sees my strength. But I decided to leave the life. And actually, I haven't talked to him about indigenous feminism because when he was very young and he hasn't acquired the knowledge that you would need for him to understand the nature of feminism that would arise naturally from us. But I've told him that there's feminism in the West, but there must be feminisms coming from elsewhere, everywhere in the world. But as talking feminism, I swear to you, the minute I mention the word feminism, my son closes up. I don't know why, but that's what happens when your mom is that person, because, oh God, I've heard it all the time. I hope that someday in future it will start ringing and say, oh, my mom used to say this. But at the moment, he won't even acknowledge. Sometimes it happens when a friend says something to him and he says, my mom is a feminist. And most of the time, all I say that if you ever treat a woman worse than you've treated me, then I've failed. Because the other time I told him, if you marry, I'll be on her side. Because mother-in-law, that is another paradigm of the horrible, horrible woman, And so, and I've had my friends saying, I can't wait for my son to marry so I can be the mother-in-law from hell. But in joking, to be fair. But it's those things. I can't really talk feminism with my son properly because he closes. But I just find ways in which to say, because if I say I'm going to be on her side and he's in love with her, then I'm okay. Then I'm a good person until they fall out, But it's not easy, especially when the world is also talking to him.
Yeah.
My voice is loud enough to carry.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Gloria Mugera, and I took Chintu on vacation and didn't go on vacation because I just spent the whole time with Chintu. So I love the book. And I am a writer myself, unpublished, but I'm interested in knowing your process. What kind of writer are you? Do you plot your stories? You did mention that your plot wanders, and whether you are, what's the word again? For people who outline all their stories, and what was the process of publishing like for you? Because here it's so very different. I can just go ahead and print it out, but what was it for you, and what kind of advice would you have for people here where so many books are being printed without great editing and good feedback, and we don't really have things like, at least I haven't been able to find critical reading partners.
Okay, that's a very long question. But my writing process is, I always tell people that before I start writing a novel, it perhaps spent 4 years in my mind knocking about. Most people talk about writing, but we don't talk about thinking. You don't go to a page and words fall out of your brain straight onto the laptop. You think about these things for a very long time. So for us, with those characters. So I know Chirabo, the conceived her. And I know where Chirabo ended up in relationship. Other things are not in the book. That's because I've spent so much time with her. When I start writing, I've been writing in my head. The other thing I do is that I have a lot of people who are willing to listen to me. Sometimes I tell the story orally, and then I listen. So I could be talking to you about the book, and often people will not tell you it's boring, but you will see them going, and that doesn't work. Or sometimes it glazes over, or they snap. When they snap out of it, I'm on a winner here. So I always tell my stories orally to somebody, but also I listen to myself. And while I'm telling it, it sounds really stupid. While it was running in my mind, it sounded perfect. So by the time I start writing, I've almost got most of the story done. And that does not take me long. and it can take me 1 or 2 years of a book that is going to be written in 6 years, okay? And then I start research. All my books tend to be research. So, but I don't do research first and then write the novel, because the research will take the novel in a different direction. And also, especially when you're researching history that is not written, you find out about Nandolo, and you're like, oh my God, I must include Nandolo. And then you find out another woman, and you put that one there. But that's not what you set out to do in your novel. So I do research when I come to it, and I just do that, and I put it back. But the biggest part of writing is editing. No one ever tells you how painful it is. You read that sentence in a second. I labored on that sentence. Now I'll give you an example. Chintu opens with, there was a knock. It took me 10 years to come up with there was a knock. I had all sorts of complex sentences that were doing such wonderful things. And then I realized, wait, they don't need complex sentences. They just need something to bring them in. And once I put there was a knock, I knew I was going to win. And yet for you, you just slide over it. It's also the thing that somebody gets a book, the first woman say, oh Jennifer, I've got your book. They finish it 2 days later, and so when is the next one? And I'm like, no, seriously, it doesn't work like that. And the process is quite long from the way I write. But not everybody writes like me. And then because I'm writing in the West, I have readers. So book sounds fine to me, wonderful. I have to give it to 3 other readers to tell me what they think. And when it goes through those, then I take it to my editor, my personal editor. And this one is expensive. She's both Zimbabwean and British, but she's Shona. The Shonas are so close to Uganda that sometimes she tells me things that I'm like, seriously, you're Shona from Uganda, but she's really good at that. Because often I write so focused on Ugandans that she says British won't understand this. You say this, you don't. So for example, for a long time I struggled with Moikano. Oh my God, Moikano. So people were, and I'm thinking, Jennifer, remove it. But I thought, no. I struggled with big words, and nobody helped me, so I left it. But these are some of the processes I go through. And often when she says, if they ask you to remove that, say no. If they ask you to remove that, you can remove it, Then from there, it goes to my agent who reads it, and they start to send them out to publishers. Now, my publishing history, how I had problems publishing my books in the beginning. But at the moment, I haven't had, so this one was taken by my publisher, but still, there's that process when the editors start editing, because I've done my editing, but the editors start to edit, and those editors are British. They are white, all of them, and they're thinking about the British, the American, they're thinking about the Australian, because that's for them, that is the market for the book. So they edit it in such a way. So they will remove words and whatever. And of course, we fought over the years. But now I have a particular editor who have acquired a Uganda dictionary. So now she tells other editors, don't bother fighting her, she's not going to accept that. And so we are building that sort of thing with my publisher. That's why it will be difficult for me to leave my publisher, because I've already built that. Most African authors don't have that. You take your Uganda word that they remove, because for them they are writing for Western readerships. So when you're considering publishing in the West, think about that, okay? that the editors there are going to be non-African. They won't understand you or what you're doing, so you have to write in a particular way. But also because I've been traveling around and talking about the idea that English does not belong to England anymore. You know, we have our English and you have better accepted. So I'm going to write that English. Because for goodness sake, making grandmothers speak perfect English, it just doesn't make sense. Or people from the 30s speak a particular English. And it kills the book. And I often say to people in the West, if you travel to Uganda, you think we are going to make everything comfortable for you? You know, there are things you won't understand. There are things that will not make sense to you, but it's part of the experience. Just travel, you know, and also discovering is wonderful. Why should you have things made simple for you? You know, we've been trained, reading is no joke. We work hard at reading. So you throw any book at Africans, we read, you know. But in the West, because they've been publishing our books, when we send them to them, they make them the books easy to understand for themselves, which is not right. And also, it is important now to let them know that there is a Ugandan audience. You know, that there is a in Africa than in Europe. But if they had seen that, why hasn't Europe invested in developing audiences in Africa? When they that, you know, by my publisher, but they don't invest in African audiences, you know, otherwise they would understand why we write the way we do, you know. Those are some of the things I'm thinking about when I'm writing, but it's becoming a lot easier for me.
So we have the pink, and then there's a brown and the pink lady.
So I just want to jump in quickly. Jennifer, could you also the success of the first woman and it has had in the West?
Okay. So I think it's the cameras, yeah. So often we're told that if we write in a particular way, especially if we focus on African subjects that are uniquely African, rather than those subjects about Africa that the West is used to, like poverty, war, dictators, homophobia, and the sort of thing that the books won't say in the West. But this book has surprised me. Of course, I can sit here and say it's taken the West 17 years to catch up with the book because I finished it in 2003. But it has surprised me how well. So it's been, just before I left, I was told by my publisher that it's been the most shortlisted book this. It has also the book of the year for writer. So it's done. Thank you. It's done surprisingly well because for me, I gave up on Western awards, you know, because I know they're going to say, well, she doesn't write for us, you know. But and I'm looking in the future. But I think the West is beginning to change, and I think the West had been a little bit patronizing to Western readers. They didn't realize that those readers are perhaps just like us. They are willing to travel to cultures and discover and work hard. Because I one time went to a university and I was told, yeah, why should you explain an African novel to us? And I said, well, why did you ask for glossary in the beginning? You know, so it's the things like that that is helping this book to do very well. And then there are the translations. So I've been translated into German, into French, into Dutch, into Turkish, Italian, I think. But of course, with the translation, you don't read it, but there are translators who are so keen on carrying the culture into the book, and they stay with you. What did you mean by this? Because you write it in English and then it moves into another language. But again, the fact that people are actually with Chintu as well, they're being translated. It shows that our books written in a particular way that is unique to us, they can travel.
Yeah. Thank you.
The lady.
Yes, the lady in pink, and then we'll take one more and then start to wind down.
Oh, this sister.
Love you.
Thank you for
Oh,
the invitation.
The judge.
And I can't tell you how enriched I am for sitting here and for hearing my diary just to be here. I'm really excited. Listening to you, Jennifer, I realize that you're a person of our generation. I see Susan here. So if you had not gone to IU, you would have been around university around the time we were at university.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking to our children. Thank you for teaching them about Africa. My daughter read your books, and that was her first African history and literature class. Because she had gone to school in the UK since she was 4. So, and she came and told me about you. And she traveled around UK following you. So you're not
the only stalker.
But when I read The First Woman, I was blown away. The thing I still can't quite reconcile in my mind, and probably some lawyers like me might have a problem doing. I don't know, maybe Jackie, I don't know about you, but how questionable is the contract between Alexa and yes, about the child. How I mean, it's going on in my mind, but at the same time, I like that you brought up the issue of social contract. That you can make a social contract and it can be respected so deeply that her son can come and knows that's my mother and Suta is my mother. And then as if that contract had taken on a life, the child.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jennifer.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming along. That was Catherine Bamkelele. Now, that social contract, perhaps for a long time, meant more to us in traditionally than the signed contracts in law for a very long time, And I first of all, I enjoyed writing that part, leading people wondering what is going on between Sota and Alexa before they meet them as children, and the decisions they made and how that decision changed their lives. But also then the son takes it up, and then the grandson takes it up. But we have those social contracts in our families in Uganda. So because I know recently that there's a part of my family that actually is not blood family, but it's my and it's actually wrong for me to say it's not blood family, But I'm only, if anybody is here, please don't report me. But this is to show how much the social contracts are, and especially among women, of that. But when I was writing it, I didn't think about it in law context. So when you brought it up as a social contract, I was like, social contract? I need to catch up on this quickly because I don't know what she's talking about. But actually, it's the things that we promise ourselves and we promise each other, and they take on a life of their own. But thank you for coming down as well. And then the decision. The brown gentleman.
Thank you, Dr. Makumbi. My name is Adolf Shedi. My question comes from the very many interviews you've granted, as to whether when you are writing, you think about yourself as writing in a continuum. And then do you think about entering into a conversation with other writers, like Osman Sembele, God's Bits of Wood, Wangusa, I think about Betwixt Mountain and Wilderness. What's the relationship between first daughter and first woman? Rachel Handel, since she's here, and many others. And how can this be helpful to young writers or other writers that are listening to you now? Thank you.
I rarely, when I'm writing, to be quite frank with you, I rarely think of how is my novel to or speaking with this other novel. Apart from the first woman, I was aware of L.H.A. Amedi, The Concubine, a book that does that. So I thought I needed to mention it. But I'm rarely doing it cautiously. So, for example, when Chintu came out, everybody was like, oh, what kind of book has books? It cannot be a novel, it's not a novel. And I felt like I was doing something new, something unique. It's until recently that I went back to Sembenos Men and I read it and thought, oh my God, I was just copying this guy. It wasn't, he had done it in the 60s. I was redoing it again. But you don't realize how much those books you read as a child are coming back into your writing. So I would sit here and say to you, yeah, I do it. No, I don't. However, it's until the book is done that I realize, oh my God, I've done this and I've done that, and it's coming from this other book or it's coming from somewhere else. It was only recent that I realized that because I grew up on the songs, Song of Lawino, Song of Ocho, Song of Prisoner, Song of Malaya. You didn't do them, people.
Lawino we did.
Lawino you did. Well, I did all of them. But there's a way, first of all, my using oral traditions that are called Popete. I'm not doing it at the first person. He started it, but I have never recognized him. And I felt so guilty and absolutely blind because it's glaring, it's right there in my face that this comes from Pepetek, who is the royalty of writers in Uganda. And then of course, I noticed the fact that I'm bold. The fact that I won't miss my words, I'll say exactly the word or whatever I need to say. And go back to Song of Lawina. Now, normally I say, oh, but my culture, we talk about these things. But actually, in literature, it was the songs that where, again, you find that he is very explicit. So I have a history, a literary historical but that I fall back on, that I grew up on without realizing, And so I walk around telling people how really this is what I thought was wonderful because this is what I knew, but actually now someone else had done it and I had been fed on that literature and now it's coming out through me. So it's actually you, the student, who's going to point these things out. When I remember, like I remembered Okot Kopitek, then I'll say, oh, of course, I think about Okot Kopitek, but I won't be lying to you. Elsewhere, I'll be saying the same. But normally, authors are not saying I'm writing a book to be in conversation with another book. That is a very scholarly thing.
So, Susan?
And there's a lady here.
and the lady in white, and then
No, there's that.
which who?
Over here.
Yes. Okay. Susan, and then the lady in white.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's great to see you. I
Good to see you again.
I had made a promise to myself not to say anything, but I know it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut, and it sometimes gets me into trouble, but I'm okay with it. But it's really good to see you, and thank you very much for keeping writing, and thank you very much for the past moment. Mine is a short question. One, just an observation that when I was reading The First Woman, I realized that I think the question I'm going to ask is actually also linked to this observation. I realized that there were things there, anecdotes that you had based on. For example, the one of the woman in Mukono who undressed. And I noticed that it was the same story that I had used for my short story, Mother Pio.
Did you?
Which Mother Pio appeared in 1998. Yes. Yeah. But the same story. So the sharing of stories within the same. I think this is what he has also been talking about books talking to each other.
Yeah.
Hello? Sorry. Then the observation I'm going to make, and the comment, the question probably, is about the fact that First Woman, at least for me, unlike Chintu, dwells a lot on rumor. You know, we have a professor friend, Grace Musila. He's a big researcher in rumor and how rumor works with politics and works with how we relate to each other.
Yes.
First Woman is so big on rumor. Chirabo learns things through rumor. Sozi and all those things that you would never have thought to learn. I mean, never have been able to learn from her grandmother or from her family. She learned through rumor. So rumor is a big technique in this novel. And I wanted to know whether you consciously decided to utilize this, or you unconsciously did because of Radio Katwe that is around us all the time, and how sometimes in our context, because I'm interested in context, this book is steeped in our context that you have been saying. It's very conscious of where you were in terms of the condition, the circumstances. I don't know whether you use it because of that, because if you know, sometimes rumor is more true than the actual facts we are given on radio and television. So could you just tell us about this technique and why you chose it for the First Woman and not for Chintu? Thank you.
Okay. First of all, when you have a child as a main character, especially here in Uganda, you know, we are excluded from conversation. I'm saying we are, as if we exclude children from conversation. We tend to treat it as being protected. You know, I don't know about you, but when I was a child, people would say, get out, grown-ups want to talk, you know. But also, we don't take decisions. I see in the West, if the family wants to move house, they will sit down with the children and say, look, we are going to move house, how this is going to affect you and whatever. You know, we don't include children in all of that. Yeah. But the story is mediated by a child who is excluded. what else could I use apart from overhearing grown-ups? You know, she overhears, she's little snippets of stories about birthday, and she constructs a whole story about it. She overhears about the relationship between Nsota and grandmother, and that bothers her. So for a long time as children, we overhear when parents misspeak. But then they realize and they stop, you know. And then, but because of the imagination of a child, that remains, and you add it up, and you know. So that was very important. Rumor had to be the way to go. But at the same time, there's a way rumor works. You know, there's someone coming and telling you the facts. But then there's overhearing something. Or there's a way rumor works in fiction that I don't know, because maybe humanity enjoys rumor, but even in a literary context, the rumor can stay longer than the facts I state in the book. You know, so it's something that I rely on without really focusing so much. Oh, I am going to use rumor here and there, but it's something that I rely on a little more to hold on to the reader's interest, because then you give them little snippets. When I set up the novel, there are a lot of questions that the reader is asking. What is going on between Nsota and whatever? Where is Kirabo's mother? So you start to hear rumors here and there, and then for me, it's a tool that keeps readers plugged.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hope I've answered your question.
Okay. And our final question of the evening. Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Boki. I'm originally from Nigeria. So it's really exciting because I feel like I'm sitting in on a conversation and picking in. But I think an author.
If you move in the corridor, I think it's feeding back from the
feeding.
speaker above you. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Talked about how when you write specifically, it also makes it universal, because I felt like the work was so very familiar. But the question I wanted to ask was that the US copy says a girl is a born reporter, but the copy here says first woman. And I wonder if you felt like there's issues with that, because I feel like now that I'm hearing it as first woman, it resonates a little deeper than a girl is a bunch of water. And I wonder if there was any issues with that, or do you feel like that still communicates what you really wanted to say with the book?
Okay, so what happened? My book was sold to the British publisher first, and they liked the first woman. And the British publisher edits bought the book, but they would buy the edited a copy from the British publisher. But the Americans had a problem with it, and I insisted for a very long time that it should be the first woman, because the first woman to a Ugandan readership would be in conversation with Chinto. Because for the Ugandan reader, I don't have to say Nambi. You know, I just have to say the first woman, and they know, okay, there's a conversation with Chinto here. But apparently in the US, there have been a lot of books with titles of the first woman. So the first woman on the moon, the first woman in the pyramid, the first woman to do this. They all have written books in terms of memoirs, and so everybody thought that if I put the first woman on market in the US, they would think it is a memoir. So the Americans suggested different titles, and we worked around those. But the book, even commas, are in the same place. They didn't even change to American English this time. They went with the British English, because I write Ugandan English is closer to British English. So they went with that, but the title would not work for that market, and that's the only reason. But I've met a lot of people who bought books, and it's demoralizing, and I think I'm not doing it again. And because Manchester happened, Manchester is a city in Britain, and they would not have it in the US. So they went with this. Let's tell the story properly. Also because it had won an award, so then it was easy to sell. For those of you who are authors, this is what happens to a book when it gets off your computer and goes to the publisher. There are all sorts of decisions to be made. So that's why that happened.
Okay. Thank you so, okay, this has time. Thank you so much, Jennifer, and our audience. I do not want to keep you any longer from your book and her hand, so we will close it early, and our selfies and selfie sticks, they're no longer happening, I think. I don't see them anymore. But thank you so much. Can we have a very, no. Before the round of applause, one last word. What's on your mind, either for the Ugandan reader, or for our times, or for the writer that will one day be a Jennifer but is a 6-year-old now? Just what's your last word?
In terms of
How you want to end? Do you want to say a blessing of our writers? Do you want to say, this is what I wish I knew when whatever it is?
Okay, that's a difficult one because I'm used to answering specific questions. How many writers are in this room? How many of you are writing? Let me see. Oh my God.
Are love letters included? Should we raise our
No, not love letters. But it's unbelievable the number of young people and older people who are picking up pens and writing. Please go for it. I just want to remind you once again that I went to Mengo Primary, that I went to Nambingo, that I went to Bujo, that I was made in Uganda. There's nothing, absolutely nothing special about me. But most of all, look at the books I'm writing. They're about Bugere. They're about things that's so ordinary to you. The important thing is you take something out of Uganda that is so ordinary and make it so extraordinary that the people want to know about Uganda and to know about us. That is the secret. But to see so many of you hoping to become writers, it is absolutely wonderful. And for the two girls who stood here and read your stories, God, you are so brave. All I can say, well done. And if your parents are in the audience, I'd like to tell them that when I went to Britain to start writing, I lied to my family. I said I was going to study literature, but actually I was going to study writing because my family would not understand why I was years spending so much money on writing novels. And they did not find out that I was an author. I won the Commonwealth Prize, and I came in. Was told, oh, she won an award. What? An award? Doing what? Writing. Is that what she's been doing? God? Oh, this child. But parents, we often in Uganda, we want doctors, we want engineers, we want lawyers. No disrespect. And we are thinking of money meeting, but do support these young people who are dreaming. Because where we come from as authors, we are dreamers, Please support them. If they don't want to become doctors, it's okay. If they're not, and a lot of authors were once intended to be doctors. They got the doctorship and threw it away and became authors. So one, that there are so many of you that are planning to be authors. Two, that there might be parents here whose children are planning to be authors. This is the place that you bring them to. The people like Goretti and the people who are building the writing and the readership in this country. So thank you very much, all of you, for coming down. And I hope we'll be in conversation again one day.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. What do you do? You will close. You have a closing. Oh, okay, sorry, okay. Yeah, so one last round of applause to Jennifer. And we will hand it back to the studio for final announcements.
No, I think you can stay. So people could come for the book signing. All right, everyone, I think we need a book collection. Not a book collection, we need a basket. I mean, Jennifer has been wonderful. Jennifer, you're, of course, I'm a fan. I have a friend in the audience who is a huge fan. When I told her that she came to office the other day, she was like, how were you even breathing? I said, "Oh, Jennifer." So I hope she gets to bring her book and sign it and take a photo or something. But thank you so much. And Jackie, thank you so much. You've been amazing. And I hope everyone that you've learned something. I hope now when you read the first woman that you will have a deeper understanding of what Jennifer intended to mean.
Decoded.
Yes, she has decoded the information thoroughly, deeply. So I hope when you read it with a better understanding now. And one of our participants from the Writers Workshop is here. So I will invite Matilda to ask a poem, and then I think we'll do the book signing outside.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess we could help Jennifer set up outside. Maybe you could help us do that, and then everyone could, go outside and do the photos and the books with Jennifer. Please don't bombard her. Like, let's, do it gently. Yeah. So as Matilda, the AWT team will help us. Matilda, I have your poem, so you'll find it at the podium. But just one person to, just tell us what, as you read the first woman, or even as Jennifer was talking, that one kind of thing, when I read it, for the first time I think I was hearing it. Yeah, it was. And when you talk about dowry, because my sister got married over the weekend, and
They brought down.
of course, they brought the dowry. There was no way those my Manero people are going to allow some kind of man to take the girl without anything. So I think it's a very important conversation for us to have, because I saw how some of my relatives were, not amused that they didn't get the envelope. That's just like, this is a young couple, So thank you. All right, this is Matilda, and she will read a poem for us.
Thank you so much for that, Rachel. Thank you so much, Ms. Jackie and Jennifer, for the conversation. I have your copies, but I haven't yet gone through them. However, this conversation is making me get a better understanding of the book that I have. So I'm going to read my poem. I wrote it during the Emerging Writers workshop. Titled My Mother's Kitchen. She is known for her kitchen garden. The supplies she has interiors and aromas. This is where your appetite begins to sharpen. Positioned at the entrance of our home, making you feel welcome. She picks and brews her tea so well, and she finds so much fun making her sumptuous meal. The space, workshop, and stove are what she loves most about her kitchen. Adding a little bit of clove to her tea feels like a glove to her heart. Oh, how I wish she would fix. Oh, sorry. Oh, how she would love to fix chicken broth, pork chops, and salad for herself. But no, she would rather cook a bowl and hello for my father that she used to long ago. Once in a while, when her brother comes around, Nkuru is made for him by the guru. Not forgetting a shawe and oburo, another delicacy that can send you to Oturo. My mother's kitchen, memories and make conversations deepen and that has traditionally turned out of a great charitable home, leaving you full some after every food gathering.
Thank you so much, Matilda. And yes, and like Jennifer said, indeed, you are brave. All our young writers, you are brave. Thank you so much. And I hope our table is ready. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our conversation. The people who have bought Jennifer's books ready to be signed. So just give Jennifer a moment to go sit at the table outside, and then you can go get your book signed, take the selfies, do everything that you need to do for your social media, or even for memory's sake. But thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
About the questions, I was saying exactly what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
By the way,
You want to come to the marble? So I am now the other Jackie interviewing.